Some tourists never learn. It is shocking that they believe that they can just go to the royal palaces and misbehave without suffering the consequences. What planet are they living on? The royal guards are trained soldiers, the best of the best, which is why they have been selected to protect and serve the king. And they would defend the king with their lives, meaning anything that comes between them and their duty might have to pay the consequences. This is why you never mess with a royal guard. As we get into it, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell to be notified about our new stories. This rude lady was just unbelievable, slapping the horse 3 times for no sensible reason. Was she informed beforehand that she had been gifted the royal horse? The guard must have fuming when she hit the horse the first and second time, which is why he put her in her place when she lifted her hands the 3rd time.
She hit the horse 3 times.
Sometimes tourists can be so ridiculous, the guard does not even need to do anything like in this next video. This lady didn't. This girl was trying to get cozy with the king's guard, but he reminded her that this wasn't the time nor the place for such nonsense.
Do not touch the king's guard!
He initially allowed her to take her pictures, but immediately she saw that he wasn't reacting. She decided she could do whatever she wants and chose to lean in closer. A big mistake. You aren't allowed to touch the guards. And she got a reality check as the guard yelled right into her ear. That is something she wouldn't forget quickly. Now for something you won't forget soon. What the hell is this guy doing? That was so vile, unbelievably disgusting and disturbing. The guard clearly wasn't interested in experiencing such irritating behavior again and yelled at him to move away when he tried returning. Someone that might not be returning anytime soon. This woman must have thought she was a member of the royal family. And these men in red coats are all here to attend to her whims. While other tourists stood back and allowed the 2 guards to have their discussion, she stayed. Then she refused to move out of the way for the guard to return to his post. And she has the audacity to hit him with a Pringles can.
My way!
So disrespectful. This boy clearly doesn't respect the royal guards. He finally gets a picture with the guard and decided it was wise to throw gang signs right beside the guard. It was so satisfying to see the guard show him how foolish he was. And for all this bravado, he was quite easy to scare. Others think they don't scare easily, like this dumb woman. This lady sees these 2 royal guards having a discussion and decides to add herself to the group chat. She must have believed she was a royal guard in her previous life. Pretty sure that guard was fuming when he turned and saw her standing there. She then has the audacity to point to her camera crew, so the guard can wait for her to take a picture. Or what exactly? A clearly annoyed guard immediately yelled at her to get out of the way.
I wave the king's guard!
This guy was clearly scared for his life and was thinking twice about going close to the horse. He should have stuck with his initial instinct. He didn't, and the horse decided to punish him for it. Just a little nibble to teach him to trust his instinct next time. Sometimes, think so you don't end up like this next person. This lady just leaned in a little too close and was taught a lesson.
Do not touch the king's lifeguard!
You can see from her face that this was probably the first time anyone had reacted to her mistake like that. And again, this guy too got the shock of his life for standing too close to the king's guard.
Get back to the king's lifeguard!
Unfortunately, the guards are just doing their jobs. And this is why the guards yell at anyone who comes too close. Because people don't know how to respect boundaries. This lady gets to take a picture, and instead of focusing on taking a picture, she goes ahead and starts playing with the royal guard's plumes. That is very wrong. This is a soldier and not a mannequin displaying a fashion accessory. Perhaps she was ignorant, but this group knew what they were doing. This group of tourists was breaking the rules by going beyond the lines that they weren't supposed to cross. The officer had to tell them to stop and go stand behind the line. It was shocking that she had to come back again to tell another tourist the same warning, and even the guard had to tell the stubborn crowd to get back. But if you think this group was bad, this next one got even crazier. This young guy is probably one of the most selfish tourists here. He came with a group that was led by a tour guide. He then started misbehaving and harassing the guards until a police officer came to have a chat with him. The officer wasn't having any of it and decided that the whole group should go away since they allowed one person to act the fool and didn't think to keep him under control. Talking about a lack of control, this woman thought she could sneak a picture in a place that belonged to the guards. The height of disrespect is just appalling. She probably thought she would get away with it while the guard was marching, not knowing that she had literally been caught with her entire body in the cookie jar.
No box!
Talk about being caught in a where you aren't supposed to be in the first place. This man must have been sleepwalking during his visit to the grounds. He walked right next to the guard under the arches to take a picture. In his defense, he would probably say he thought it was allowed since the chain wasn't there. The guard allowed his voice to correct that assumption.
Get fucked!
Embarrassed, this tourist tries to walk back nonchalantly, covering with a shaky smile. However, it gets weirder. This guy is obviously a content creator looking for grub to serve his ever-hungry audience. And to get a cheap content, he thinks he would get a smile as a reaction for harassing a royal guard on duty. Not today, bro!
You are handsome! Step back! Oh!
The guard had a perfect reaction to his antic, and his soul almost left his body. Then there was this. This woman must have thought this guard looked familiar, like one of her past lovers, perhaps, because she literally tried to put her whole arm into his for a picture, like they were on a date. Even the guard was so stunned he was speechless for a minute and could only stare at the tourist. She eventually saw her mistake, unlike this next tourist. This guy must have done something provocative to the guards for them to confront him like this. Initially, it looks like they are having a simple discussion with him, but he then puts his hands on the soldiers and seems to push them. You have to be on something to think you can take on the royal guards on their ground. With the adrenaline gradually fading away, our supervillain tourist returns to his senses, but it's already too late. We wonder what his explanation would be for trying to take on 3 guards. This tourist was mocking the guard and stamping his foot as pathetically as possible. Hope he got enough for his 5 seconds of humiliation. Even the guard didn't want to expend his energy reacting to him. This person put his hands on the royal guard's carefully polished boot for a picture, and he instead got a good kick to remind him that this wasn't his personal studio and the guard was a warm body, not a statue for photo shoots. This father and his sons got a reality check when they stepped too far in the arches. The guard immediately confronted them.
Get out of the office!
It's beyond us how they missed the entire crowd of people right beside them who were staying as far away from the arches as possible. Not surprised that the crowd started laughing at them. However, this next group should not be smiling at all because we fail to see the humor in their actions. Look at how these 2 kids are misbehaving, and their parent is just laughing. The younger kid even tries to prank the guard who just going about his duty. It's a shame on the disgusting parents for allowing their children to act so disrespectfully, and it is painful they didn't get what this other tourist got. In all his years, this man has probably never been yelled at like that. His facial expression shows that it was a huge shock for him as he stood there for a while, rooted to the ground. But then again, the royal guard is just doing his job. The area the man was going into wasn't meant for tourists. Unfortunately, this man chose to take a stroll right there, and the guard stopped him in his tracks. And the tourist eventually pulled himself together and stepped back from the area. And you can still see that he hadn't recovered yet from the yelling. Oftentimes, yelling at tourists seems to produce the very best results. Every time.
Get off the road!
This group of teenagers thought they could be rebellious and do whatever they liked. The guard quickly reminded them that he was their parent or teacher or any other person they disrespect all the time. While their wrongdoing can be linked to teens' angst, what would be the excuse for this next group? They were treating the soldier like they were there for their entertainment. It is as if these guards aren't at their job working to feed their families. The way these tourists disregarded it was just so bad that the officer literally came to send them out of the yard. Enough was enough. This is why this other police officer didn't want people coming too close. He saw that the tourists were crossing their boundaries and was quick to call them to order. Another officer had to take charge of the same situation because a procession was approaching and it could easily get out of control. In fact, you can hear him say it was for the tourists' safety to stand back.
Ladies and gents, listen to me. You need to stand behind the bollards for your safety. Move back, please. The horse is going to come out. For your safety, you need to dress back. Thank you.
The police try their very best, but unfortunately, some tourists are just lost in their own world. Here are two great examples for your viewing pleasure. The officer is telling them to move back because the guards are marching this way. You can hear him tell the lady and the man in front of him to move to the left repeatedly.
Left or right, left or right. You're in the way. You're in the way. You're in the way.
He even gestures to them, showing them where to move to. Imagine the shock of this police officer when the pair he had literally just told to move for the Royal Guard ended up blocking the path of the marching soldiers. The dumbness was so great that the officer kept repeating the same phrase, like someone in a seizure. This lady almost had that seizure. The horse was just about to turn and check its side mirror when some invisible force threw this lady back. She probably won't go near horses for a while, for good reason, like this next scenario. Watch the way this horse just charged in one direction. This is why officers and guards would ask tourists not to crowd the horses. But instead of listening, some people would choose to ignore the soldiers who have trained with these horses and have gotten used to how erratic their behavior can be. Nobody knew the horse would move in that direction, and it would have been difficult to prevent an accident had the crowd been too close. This is another example of how unpredictable animals can be. The horse broke into a trot and refused to listen to the tugs of its rider, and you can't even blame the guards, because when the horses enter into this state, it is very difficult to rein them back in, especially when they can't figure out what is wrong with them. This particular incident almost turned tragic because the tourists were just all over the place instead of sticking to the lines that had been put in place to guide them. The parents of the little boys were embarrassingly negligent in a place where there were armed personnel and very powerful horses. Even this man must have felt the power in the hoof of this steed. The tourists shouldn't be that close to the horse and naturally shouldn't be shocked that the horse chose to react in any way. Even the girl could understand the humor of the situation, which was clearly lost on Mr. Main Character. People don't seem to learn. Many tourists keep trying to grab the reins the first chance they get. This woman certainly got the worst yell.
Get off the reins!
If you have gotten close enough for a great photo, why do you need to touch the reins? This person even had a family member with her who experienced the full embarrassment. It wasn't until the woman decided to grab the reins from the hand of the guard himself that all hell broke loose.
Off the reins!
This was just tragic. You haven't seen the full extent of how foolish some of these tourists can be. How dare you touch the sword of the King's Guard? Talk about bad behavior. This family must have been confused about where they were. It initially started with the woman, followed by her son and others. They harassed the guard, but he remained stoic and didn't even respond to their antics. It is not bad enough that you disrespect the guard alone. You are touching a weapon held by a trained soldier, and it never occurred to you that what you are about to do is extremely dangerous. Yeah, thankfully, the guards have a high level of self-control and only yell at the woman's foolishness. He could be like this woman. The horse tried to bite the lady on the other side of the horse, and this lady clearly saw that, but decided to ignore the red flag. Probably thought the horse would be nicer to her. Fortunately for us, she got bitten. The officers around must have informed these tourists that horses are sometimes aggressive, which does not make them very friendly. And obviously these ladies saw the signs, but still refused to learn anything. She definitely learned her lesson as she walked away in pain. These two tourists went too close to the arches and weren't welcomed. To their credit, they immediately changed their position after the guard yelled at them.
Get back from the chain!
They probably understood that they were in the wrong, just like this person too. You could argue that he saw where his mates were going to stand and chose to do the exact opposite. You would be right. It was clear that there was a designated place for tourists to stand, but he ignored it. The guard was quick to deliver punishment, and the guy admitted his mistake and stepped back.
Hey, stand back from the archers!
However, not everyone takes accountability. After failing to read the sign that tells tourists not to touch the reins, this person had the audacity to get offended when she was cautioned by the guard to let go of the reins. We have seen a lot of entitlement in this video, but this has to be the one that takes up a huge part of the cake. It makes you wonder how completely immersed people really are in themselves. You can guess what those officers told her. This man clearly doesn't know how to read, because it says right there at the back that the horse may kick and bite. It is right there. And this man lets his daughter stand where she is standing and even touches the horse. After the horse bites her hand, her father looks to the superhuman royal guard to do something. Thankfully, even though the horse held the hand in between his teeth for a while, he didn't clamp down on it. However, you can tell the girl was feeling some discomfort. You wonder what the father was thinking, bringing his daughter so close to a horse that can kick and bite spontaneously. Look at how close this woman is to the horse. You would think she personally oversaw the care of this horse right from birth. The woman proceeds to take a picture, and unaware of her presence, the horse steps on her flip-flop. She tried to retrieve it, but the horse didn't move, making it difficult for her to get her shoe back. Shockingly, her brave young son dove in to help, a very, very dangerous move. Thankfully, the horse was not fully aware of his presence, and the boy's mom quickly pulled him back to keep him safe from the danger. She came to her senses when she remembered that the horse she was getting all cozy with could kick and bite. The guard eventually helped the woman by gently moving the horse backward so she could get her flip-flops. Some parents clearly suck at parenting, because what sort of parent leaves their kid beside a horse that is bred for battle? We are pretty sure the parents' kids were taking pictures while their kid's ear was almost bitten by the horse. Luckily, the kid only got a minor scratch on the face. Obviously, it could have been worse. Luckily, it wasn't. If it had been, these parents would have had themselves to blame for not properly taking care of their kids. This lady clearly didn't think this through. She started to march mockingly alongside the guard, who didn't react and continued to do his job. Another tourist saw what she was doing and foolishly decided to join her. Then, a kid sees two dumb adults misbehaving and thinks they are having fun, so he joins them too. Unfortunately, things didn't end well for them, as the guard stomped his foot and yelled at them. This next person got more yelling from the guards. Look at this loud and disrespectful girl who had been harassing this royal guard for almost a minute. These rude tourists were calling him different names as if they are trying to get the attention of a pet. Someone needs to tell them that the royal guards are not toys or comedians. Nobody understands why the girls behave like they are at a show. This is an example of how some tourists are sent out on these tours. Even being caught unawares can't affect the unwavering discipline of a royal guard. This guard was standing on business when, to his surprise, he saw a hand holding a phone camera coming from a place that had a fence. He then yells at the intruder to get back. This person takes a few steps back, and the guard has to leave his position to come and warn them again. You can only imagine how frustrated the guard was that he had to leave his position. Still, even though the guard had yelled earlier, he kept his cool and calmly told the intruder to get back behind the fence. Young or old, it doesn't matter. The royal guards have a job to do, and they would stop at nothing to get it done. In these instances, you almost want to applaud them for how they end up executing it. These kids think they are in Disneyland and can do whatever they like, while they remain rude to adults. Not on this guard's watch. They were mocking the guard and playing with the chains when the guard decided to get them to stop their little fun and games. He yelled at them enough to scare the terrible behavior away from their bodies.
Get off the fence!
This is a classic example of tourists never learning. They do whatever they please as long as it amuses or entertains them, no matter how silly. The woman on the other side of the horse grabbed the reins, but this guard wasn't in the mood to tolerate the disrespect today. She didn't expect that savagery from the royal guard. She had become used to the quiet and statute-like appearance of the guards. Unfortunately, when the guard yelled at the woman to stop, she wasn't the only one terrified. This lady was ready for a full-blown photo shoot and forgot that she was at a place where other people worked for a living. It was only when the guard marched into her that she realized her mistake. This old man stood blocking the guard and horse's path to their post. Clearly, he had no idea he was in the wrong position. Thankfully, his friends were there to drag him away to avoid the disgrace he was about to face. It must be great to have friends who have your back, even when it puts them in trouble like this lady. This couple was taking a great picture until her partner fumbled a water bottle, and it landed under the horse. It's funny that they wanted the guard to do something about it, but he was clearly unconcerned. This should probably be a good hint for the couple to leave the bottle and be on their way. But no. The woman had to get her bottle back and was trying to duck under the horse to retrieve it. The guard yelled at her so suddenly she almost had a heart attack. Get up! Good sense would have prevented that. This man was clearly not in the right state of mind. And it was time for a shift change. The royal guards moving around with the horses and tourists prancing around at the same time is a recipe for disaster. This was something well known to the officer, and he was quick to move him away from that area. The tourist was even trying to speak to horses. Talk about weird! The soldier had just given some water to the horses, and in his humble experience, it was important to give the horses some breathing space after each drinking water. So he tells the tourist trying to take a picture to step away for a moment. He had barely turned his back when another tourist ignored that instruction and jumped in to take a picture. The royal guard wasted no time in dishing out a sweet reward. She was out of there in seconds. She would clear us. Sometimes it takes the horse to teach people much needed life lessons. We have said this again and again. On this royal grounds, the horses would humble you quick enough. For many tourists like this individual who can't seem to stick to the rules, the horses would clearly guide you with their teeth. This crowd just kept surrounding the horse. This wasn't a good situation, and the guard needed to take control of the situation, so he signaled the police officer to get the people to move back. Shockingly, almost nobody was listening to the officer. Those who were posing for pictures continued as if the officer was just a slight change in the wind. Only after a while did they start to move back, and unbelievably, some were still arguing with the officer. This next tourist, too, started arguing with the royal guard and got shut down expertly. The manner in which he just came to grab the rein that shouldn't be touched in the first place is just disrespectful. Then, the guard tells him to get his hands off the reins, and he ignores that instruction again and again. This gets the horse agitated, and this pisses off the guard, who then shows the tourist that he is being serious. Again, as we have seen many times with some of these tourists, they continue with their dumb acts just to get a picture. Experience. This woman had to be reminded that this wasn't her house, and the royal guards and horses weren't there to do whatever she wanted. Her kid wanted to take a picture. Take the picture and move on. No, this woman wanted the horse to pose for the picture. Some of the tourists seemed to have a shocking sense of entitlement. Thankfully, the guard showed her that what she wanted didn't matter to him or the horse, and he wasn't here for such nonsense. When you think you have seen it all, something like this happens. This person was removed for being so drunk. Clearly, he wasn't there for anything sensible. But the guards protect the royals and the integrity of the palace. A drunk person wouldn't be allowed to soil the prestige of the king's abode. Then there are children right there. Being in that state in front of children is just abominable. The officers had to get rid of him quickly. This was another terrible display that couldn't be allowed around the palace. This individual was completely out of it, and even with the guard trying to get him away from the horse, it was hopeless. Until other tourists, probably someone from his party, came to pull him away from the horse. It is just a completely unacceptable behavior. This lady wasn't intending to touch the horse or guard at first, but when the horse began to nudge her, she decided to touch it. You can hear other tourists telling her not to touch. Even her friend almost gets angry with her as she keeps telling her not to be rude. But surprise, the lady touched the horse and was yelled at by the guard. Imagine coming to the palace as a tourist and throwing your glove in order for the king's guard to pick it up for you. How arrogant can you be? The way the king's guard even refused to acknowledge it was just perfect. And the officer who came to tell them they were wrong for doing that did it right. These guards are highly respected members of the royal household. They are not there to do your bidding. They are the king's guards. Was that supposed to be cute and funny? The guard didn't find it cute and funny. Look at how he immediately stomped his foot and turned away from that eyesore. These content creators are simply something else entirely. So you left home, and this was the idea that came to you for content. How dumb can you be, really? Even though she knew it was a terrible idea, the guard immediately turned his back and marched away. Tourists seemed to intentionally disrespect the royal guards. This person was instructed not to touch the reins, and she came back hoping to get a picture. The royal guard wasn't going to be played for a fool and decided not to allow her to take any picture at all. This was great so that other rude tourists would understand that the royal guard should be treated respectfully. This is a fine example of what the royal guards deal with daily. Pulling the reins from the hands of a tourist should be enough of a hint for any sensible person to understand. Instead, the guard had to shout twice like he was talking to a toddler to get this tourist to release the reins. This next video is literally a man behaving like a child. So, this man was initially scared to go near the horse. When he eventually gathered the courage, he still went ahead and did the wrong thing. The guard did his duty and got him off the reins. The tourist, after he composed himself and understood what he did wrong, came back to get his picture. This is something some other people can't seem to learn. This tourist, for example, held the reins until the horse got agitated, and the guard wasn't pleased with this foolishness. Even the police showed up to caution the troublemaker, and they were incredibly polite about it. The royal guards probably want some tourists to copy that and return the favor. They can only hope, of course. Look at how this man latched onto the horse's rein, like it was a lifeline. The guard warned him to get off, and it was almost like his hands were glued to the reins. And you can see how chaotic it all became in the end. The horse almost trampled the dumb tourist who wouldn't get his hand off the reins, stressing the guard who has to fight to take control of the animal before something really tragic happens. This is why the sign says not to touch the reins. Unfortunately, it's not something every tourist reads. The woman on the other side of the horse kept pulling the reins for no reason at all. You can see the two people on the other side stand and take their pictures without wrapping their hands on the reins of horse. So, you wonder why this lady can't take a picture respectfully. The royal guard is quick to let her know what he thinks of her rudeness. Unknown to some of these tourists, the guards are just trying to save them from some of the following pain. This lady stood too close to the horse. That was her first mistake. Her second was focusing her attention on something else while backing the horse. The horse must have sniffed something nice in her hair and gone searching, only to be disappointed. Unfortunately, the lady herself would experience a pain she wasn't prepared to feel on holiday. At least she would have learned a valuable lesson: never back a strange horse. But she isn't the only person learning something new. It seemed like this tourist was very much a newbie when it came to horses. So when she saw them at the palace, she couldn't contain her excitement and felt the best way to fully connect with them was to put her hand in their mouths. This is definitely the final time she would ever try to fully connect with a horse. Same with this kid. Unlike the lady, this kid wasn't even looking to connect with any horse. He was just here for a picture and got bitten by a horse. While we feel sorry for the boy, the guard and police officers would probably blame the guardians of this kid for placing him so close to the horse in the first place. This lady, however, has no one to blame but herself. This horse was taking no prisoners. The tourists were just too close to find out what they tasted like. The lady in glasses quickly left after sensing that the horse was getting frisky. The woman in yellow wasn't quick to notice this and ended up becoming the victim. This tourist got conned by the horse and got bitten. It looked like it was just rubbing its head on the lady, but apparently it was simply unwrapping the human to get to the fleshy part. And you think horses aren't smart. Sometimes the horses just get bored after standing around for hours, so they would just get into a frenzy, like this one. Of course, it could all be in good fun. You just have to make sure the horse's teeth don't contact your skin, because then it wouldn't be funny anymore, especially to you. We must admit that the horses are sometimes jovial and actually mean no harm. This is a great example. This kid and his brother have posed for a picture, and the little boy gets a little nibble on the side of his head. The boy does take it like a champ. Another example. This horse playfully snacks on his clothes, and at first, he was obviously a bit scared. But kudos to him for trying to get closer to the horse. It has been observed that animals are more receptive to children, and this is why most of the time the royal guards would allow the kids to do what they wanted and let them have a great overall experience. These ladies got more than they bargained for when they chose to have their picture with the horse. Even though they were standing farther than most tourists, the horse still tried to get them. But lucky, they were very quick to react and avoided being chomped by the power jaws of this beast. The horses of the king are magnificent, but they are still beasts, no doubt, and this makes them unpredictable. This horse lost its senses and went out of line, and the guard had no idea what happened to his horse. This continued for a while the other guards stayed calm, hoping the rider would regain control of the situation. At one point, the horse moved dangerously close to the audience. Eventually, it was led away so people wouldn't get hurt. The royal guard couldn't keep struggling with the horse in a public area, so he led it to a private space instead. This was the only time the horse followed his lead. Even though it was the day of the king's coronation, there were still some issues. To have been chosen for the day, this horse had to be very well trained. However, people would tell you that no matter how well trained a horse is, obedience is not always guaranteed, and it might have been spooked by a piece of paper beside its legs. You never know. The guard maintained his composure throughout, even as the horse crashed into bystanders. Thankfully, no one was injured. For example, look at this horse leave its post for no reason, and despite the fact that it has a rider holding its reins. And see how it almost ran into the group that kept surrounding it, and how it remained unsettled for a while before eventually calming down to return back to its post. This is why the security guards let tourists know what to do and not do regarding the horses. An example of what not to do. Was she about to enter into the horse? How close can you get that would cause your bag's chain to get entangled with the horse's reins? As the girl tried, she couldn't get the bag out of the reins. This certainly started to agitate the horse, but fortunately for her, a tourist came to help her deal with the problem before it got any more out of control. For when things get out of control, check this out. This is one of the situations when you have an out-of-control horse. It is possible it showed no cause for concern until the parade started, leaving the rider very confused. It refused to join the parade and started trotting, then dropped the royal guard on the ground and started galloping around. This is the unpredictability of horses. It eventually calmed down, but by then, it was too late. So, when you have people like this next tourist behave stupidly, you don't even know what to say. After holding the reins of the horse so intensely and agitating the horse, the royal guard tells this tourist off. But you can see the tourist reacting very nonchalantly. And he even seems to be arguing with the guard, who doesn't even engage him. The police then show up before the disrespectful tourist decides to act like he has been polite all the while. It's same situation, and we don't understand why people expect a different reaction from the royal guards who are simply doing their jobs. Don't touch the reins seems very self-explanatory enough. The palace decided to add white lines to make it even easier for the royal guards to avoid dealing with tourists who overstep their boundaries. The line was added around the post to prevent tourists from going anywhere near the royal guards. It still allowed the people to take their pictures and videos, but no more touching. Still, the royal guards have to tell people to watch out for the line because many tourists just ignore everything, and the only thing on their minds is to get as close as possible to the royal guard and the horses. One example is this lady walking right into the boundary to take a picture. When the guard tells her to move out of the box, she starts arguing with him. She is very clearly in the wrong. It is only when the horse starts to get agitated that she fully steps away from the box to take her picture. This person is what the ideal tourist should try to be. He came for his picture and saw the line. He immediately stepped back and asked the guard if it was okay to be where he was, to which he got a response. Whoever you are, as long as you are in their way, you will be trampled over or pushed out of the way. As we have mentioned, some people just come to the grounds to test the guard's patience and see what they can get away with. whether the man realized it or not. Being pushed out of the way should have taught him an important lesson. Never stand in the path of royal guards when they're on the move. Because this man is not aware that royal guards don't stop whenever they are on the move. They just keep going until they get to their destination. This guy was probably aware of this and just did whatever pleased him. You can see from his initial pause when it was clear that the marching guards were coming in his direction. How dumb are you really to think that you would force the royal guards to change direction for you? These protesters were clearly misinformed, because what made them believe that their coming to lay down on the street in front of a marching band of royal guards would stop the king's guard? These are the king's guards, and they stop for no one. Even the police officers who have tried to get the protesters arrested got the same treatment. Like many we have seen, these wannabe Sherlock Holmes are always around investigating how far they can go in annoying the guards. The guy in red is clearly harassing the guard, probably at the behest of a dare. He kept moving across the eye line of the guard on duty, whose job is mainly to protect the royals by being watchful. And yet, here is this person who is not using common sense. When the guard reacts, the fellow leaps into a high jump that even Olympians will be envious of. The royal guards have famously protected Britain's Buckingham Palace for centuries. These elite soldiers have undergone rigorous training and are widely known for their insane discipline and self-control, which is why they don't react when tourists try to provoke them. But, as you have seen, when pushed too far, many of these tourists quickly realize that they have made a terrible mistake only when they face the force of the royal guard. To avoid such horrible situations, that would lead to a bad experience during a time when you should be enjoying yourself. It's better to learn to respect the royal guards. It is just basic humanity. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell to receive our new stories.